Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're venturing into some really fascinating territory. We're exploring the often unexplained history around Antarctica. This was actually sparked by a listener's curiosity.
That's right. We've got this audio excerpt, and it lays out some pretty unconventional theories connecting historical events to the continent.
Yeah, some really out there stuff. So our mission here isn't to, say what's true or false.
No, definitely not.
We just want to unpack the claims being made in this source material, trace the connections they're drawing.
And help you, the listener, understand the key questions that come up.
Exactly, without endorsing any specific viewpoint, of course.
Right. This audio piece, it really throws a lot into the mix, links historical moments with concepts that are, well, pretty far from mainstream accounts.
Okay, so let's dig in. The audio kicks things off with Operation High Jump, 1947.
Ah, yes, the big U.S. military mission to Antarctica, led by Admiral Byrd.
Right. Now, according to our source, the stated purpose wasn't just exploration. It was supposedly about finding and destroying hidden Nazi bases down there.
Based on intelligence they apparently had, that's the claim.
And the scale of it, I mean, the source mentions 13 ships, something like 4,700 men.
Yeah, nearly 5,000 personnel. And supposedly really advanced weaponry for the time.
So this wasn't just a mapping exercise, was it?
Not according to this source, no. The idea that the main goal was neutralizing a Nazi presence. That implies they thought there was a pretty significant threat down there.
Makes you wonder, though, what kind of intelligence would even suggest that? Such a remote place.
Exactly. A well-established, dangerous Nazi base in that kind of hostile environment. It's a big claim.
And it gets stranger. The source goes on to say the U.S. forces, well, they didn't succeed.
It actually claims they were defeated.
Defeated.
Yeah.
And that Admiral Byrd supposedly came back and had to brief Congress about what happened.
There's even this mention, kind of specific, about alleged Russian video footage, supposedly showing U.S. planes encountering, well, flying saucers.
Flying saucers.
Hmm.
Okay, so what does defeat even mean here? Was it like a military loss to Nazis?
Or maybe just overwhelming environmental problems.
Or, yeah, like the source hints, maybe they ran into something completely different, something unexpected.
The whole idea of a secret congressional briefing and this alleged Russian footage, it definitely adds layers of intrigue, doesn't it?
It really does. And here's where the connections start getting, well, even more complex. The audio then talks about Nazi connections to the U.S. space program.
Right. It points out quite factually that two big names at early NASA, Werner von Braun and Hermann Oberth, were former Nazi Party members and scientists.
That part's historical record.
Yeah.
But then there's this alleged quote from Oberth.
Ah, the one about German scientists getting help from other worlds.
Yeah, that's quite a leap.
It is. I mean, if you connect this to the whole narrative the source is building, you can see the implication. A potential path for advanced, maybe even non-human technology.
Moving from Nazi Germany, perhaps via Antarctica, into the U.S. space program.
That seems to be the suggestion. But again, the quote about other worlds, that's a huge extrapolation, not something with solid proof.
Then the story brings in James Forstall, first Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
And the claim here is that he was pushing to reveal the findings from Operation High Jump, about this advanced technology stuff.
He wanted to go public with it, according to the source.
That's the claim. And then, tragically, the audio states he was thrown from a window at Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Wow. Okay, that's dramatic. The implication is pretty clear.
Yeah, that someone wanted to silence him, to keep this information suppressed.
It paints a picture of some, powerful, shadowy forces at play. Makes you think, what kind of information would be considered that dangerous? If you follow this line of reasoning.
Definitely raises the stakes in this narrative. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The audio also touches on some historical anomalies.
Like the Peary Race map.
Exactly, from the 1500s. The source claims it shows Antarctica, but without the ice cap.
Which, if true, would completely contradict the standard geological timelines for when Antarctica became glaciated.
Right. Big contradiction.
Now, the Peary Race map is genuinely fascinating. Mainstream cartography often suggests its accuracy might come from compiling older source maps, maybe fragmented ones.
So, not necessarily direct knowledge of an ice-free Antarctica.
It's debated. Interpreting it as definitively showing an ice-free continent involves specific alignments and assumptions that aren't universally accepted. But it is often cited in these kinds of alternative history discussions.
Then there's Francis Bacon, his book New Atlantis from 1627. The audio highlights descriptions in that book of what sounds like incredibly advanced ancient tech Things like genetic engineering, skyscrapers,
Even laser weapons.
scrubbed way back in the 1600s.
Yeah. Well, New Atlantis is generally seen as utopian fiction, a philosophical idea about an ideal society.
But the source uses it differently.
It seems to use these descriptions to suggest maybe they weren't just imagination, maybe they were echoes of actual lost technologies from some forgotten past. It fits the overall theme.
Okay, so maps, old books, it all seems to lead towards this idea of advanced civilizations potentially linked to Antarctica.
Right. And the speaker in the audio clarifies something here. They say they don't buy into the idea that aliens created humans.
Okay, so not ancient aliens in that sense. What's their interpretation then?
They talk about the Anunnaki from Sumerian texts,
Right, I've heard of them.
but interprets them, along with biblical accounts, as fallen angels.
Fallen angels. Okay, so we're moving into mythology and theology here.
Definitely. It's framing these ancient figures not just as gods from Mesopotamian myths, but connecting them to Judeo-Christian ideas of rebellious celestial beings.
And this interpretation then connects to what? Hidden knowledge.
Exactly. The source suggests these entities, these fallen angels, they don't die, and they possess hidden esoteric knowledge. It calls it black physics.
Black physics. What's that supposed to be?
It's not clearly defined in the audio, but the implication is it's some kind of powerful, maybe dangerous understanding of the universe beyond our current science, supposedly known by these entities.
And the source connects this to CERN and occult rituals.
Yeah, that connection is made. It's highly speculative, obviously, linking cutting-edge physics research with ancient esoteric practices via this idea of black physics.
Okay, this next part is really where it gets quite striking. The audio asks why world leaders are supposedly going to Antarctica.
Right. It mentions prominent religious leaders, specifically the Russian Orthodox Patriarch,
And powerful political figures, too.
allegedly being summoned there.
Summoned. By who or what?
The theory presented is that there's a powerful entity, or maybe a group of them down there, something with superior intellect.
Superior intellect capable of summoning world leaders.
That's the claim, that these entities have persuasive or intellectual abilities far beyond ours, influencing global power players.
Wow. Okay. And what's the supposed agenda behind this summoning?
According to the audio, establishing a universal religion, a single world government, and one monetary system.
Basically, global control, orchestrated from Antarctica by these entities.
That's the picture painted. It even throws in the Vatican's preparations for potentially encountering extraterrestrial life.
Right, the whole question of baptism for aliens.
Exactly. Which, it's worth noting, is a real theological discussion happening in some circles, separate from this specific Antarctica theory.
But the speaker in the audio has a strong opinion on that.
Yes. They state firmly that aliens wouldn't be created in God's image and likeness. Which then raises the counter question, well, who did create them?
Interesting theological angle there. Okay, so the audio then seems to loop back to ancient history,
Yeah, talking about pre-Adamic civilization.
before Adam and Eve.
Right. Referencing things like the Sumerian king list, which suggests civilizations going back hundreds of thousands of years, way before the traditional biblical timeline of, say, 6,000 years ago.
And the claim is these ancient pre-Adamic civilizations, they also had advanced knowledge.
Including genetic manipulation, according to the source, and crucially, that much of this lost history and technology is somehow connected to Antarctica.
So Antarctica is the key location for all this lost, ancient, possibly non-human linked stuff.
That seems to be the central argument weaving through the audio clip.
And it ends with an analogy.
Yes, to the film 2001, A Space Odyssey, suggesting that what's maybe being found or is present in Antarctica isn't just old tech like the obelisks in the movie.
But actual sentient entities, the fallen angels mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It's a way to tie together the threads. Ancient advanced tech, powerful non-human beings, and potentially ongoing influence, all centered on Antarctica.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main claims we've unpacked from this source audio. We've got Operation High Jump, the alleged U.S. military defeat there.
Possibly involving unknown craft. Then the Nazi connections, von Braun, Oberth, the other worlds.
Quote, the mysterious death of James Forrestal, supposedly linked to revealing secrets.
The Peary race map, potentially showing an ice-free Antarctica. Francis Bacon's descriptions of ancient high-tech.
Leading to theories of advanced civilizations interpreted as fallen angels or ancient entities possessing black physics.
Entities supposedly summoning world leaders to Antarctica with an agenda for global unification or control.
And finally, This idea of pre-Adamic civilizations with advanced knowledge, possibly genetic manipulation, all tied back to Antarctica.
It's quite a web of interconnected claims. And again, it's really important we stress we've just explored the information as it was presented in that audio source.
Right, we haven't tried to validate it or debunk it here. The goal was just to understand the narrative itself and the questions it raises.
Which brings us to a final thought, really, for you, the listener.
Yeah. When you consider this long and really unusual history, these extraordinary claims surrounding Antarctica, what basic assumptions do you hold about our past, about our present?
And are there possibilities, maybe even unconventional ones like these, that might warrant some further thought or even your own independent exploration? Something to mull over?